Yo, welcome to episode 64 of the Gig Life podcast. I'm your host, Stevie Taylor. I hope you're well. This episode is with the brilliant Steve Hunter. Now, before we roll into that, please take a minute and listen to this brief service announcement from the Gig Life podcast. As I've always said, the Gig Life podcast is free to you. It always has been, and it always will be free for you to access the interviews and the related content at any time. But like anything else these days, the Gig Life podcast costs money to produce. Websites, podcast hosting subscriptions, travel costs to visit the guests for interviews, Wi-Fi and data costs, production equipment upgrades, as well as the time, of course. Now, if you see the value in the Gig Life podcast, if you would like to help, and of course, if you're able to, you can now donate. I have set up a secure link where you can donate to the Gig Life podcast. You can give as little or as much as you like. It's not a recurring payment thing. It's not a Patreon type setup where you pay to continue to receive the content. It's completely voluntary. If you choose to give nothing, that's perfectly fine. You will still be able to listen to the podcast as you have to this point, and you will continue to receive the new episodes as they become available, just like everybody else. Nothing will change. But whatever you do give will be very much appreciated, and also know that you'll be helping me to bring you and everybody else all these great interviews. The secure donate link is in the show notes of this episode or on the website, thegiglifepodcast.com. As always, you can contact me anytime via the website. There's a contact section on the website there, or you can hit me up on Facebook or Instagram, and the handle there is at the Gig Life Podcast, or you can hit me up on Twitter at the Gig Life Pod. Or you can email me, thegiglifepodcast@gmail.com. My guest today is Steve Hunter, a renowned virtuoso of the electric bass, a prolific songwriter and composer, and Steve has also been a bass teacher for over 20 years. Born and raised in Kent in England, Steve was picking out melodies on the family piano from an early age, but it wasn't until shortly after his family immigrated to Australia when, at about age 15, he picked up an electric bass and immediately knew that creating music and playing bass was to basically become his life. With 10 albums to date as bandleader, Steve's also gone on to play with Billy Cobham, Chick Corea, Bay City Rollers, Dig, Tree with David Jones, the Errol Buddle Quartet, Dale Barlow Band, and many, many others. Steve also was the very first bass teacher at the Australian Institute of Music back in 1990. These days, Steve still teaches, and he has his band, the Steve Hunter Trio, with Gordon Rytmeister and Matt McMahon, and he also plays with the Subterraneans. It was great to hang with Steve at his home studio and talk about his life, his music, his thoughts. I hope you dig it as much as I did. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for the great Steve Hunter. Cheers. All right, I think we're rolling.
Okay.
Steve Hunter, welcome to the Gig Life podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
How are you, man?
Good.
Good? Yeah, thanks for having me at your house.
Yeah.
If you see me look down at this every now and then, I'm just double checking that it's still recording and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, cool. All right, so what's a day, a week in the life of Steve Hunter in October 2019?
2019, well, it would be 4 gigs, I think. It's 4 gigs, I think, this month. They're all
right.
Steve Hunter band gigs.
Yep.
That's a trio. Mm-hmm. That would usually be... This month it's been a different drummer. I'd usually have Gordon Rytmeister, but he's got a busy month, so I'm using a different drummer for this month. But that's myself and Matt McMahon on the piano.
Yep.
And
So you, Gordon and Matt are the...
Me, Gordon and Matt
is
are the trio. Occasionally I add somebody else.
Yeah.
But that's the core band I've had for the last, well, this year anyway. For the 4 years before that, I had a horn in the band as well. But I decided I just wanted to cut back to a trio for a bit and just do a bit of that.
Yep. Was that out of necessity?
No, not really.
Just a change of music?
Yeah, it was. I had a quartet with the horn in it, and there were quite a few gigs that the horn player couldn't make. So we go, okay, well, that's cool. We'll just do it as a trio. And then I started really just enjoying it as a trio.
Right.
So I thought, well, maybe I'll just run with that for a bit. So I think of all the bands I've had over the years, I don't think I've ever just had a trio, actually. So I was just really enjoying doing sort of trio gigs with Matt and Gordon.
Yep.
And that sort of basic lineup of the band's been going for... I've been at Lazy Bones with that band for the last 5 years. I've been resident there for 5 years. And for the last 3 years, it's been with that lineup. And then 2 years prior to that, it was the same, except Andy Gander was on drums, and then he moved up to Brunei, and then Gordon stepped in. So that's mostly what I do. And that's the sort of... Yeah, that's what I hinge my musical activities on, basically what I wanted, my thing.
Yep.
But then I played with a band called the Subterraneans and other various sort of bits and pieces and bits and bobs, you know.
Right, so who's the Subterraneans? I've heard the name, I'm just not sure.
It's led by a saxophone player called James Ryan.
Oh, yep.
And has a guitar player called Michael Coggins. And a drummer from South America called Giorgio Rojas. And
he's a percussionist too, eh?
Yeah, he is. And then it's got a percussionist as well.
Right, okay.
Iko plays percussion as well in it. That's nice.
Right.
Pat Powell sometimes sings with us.
Right.
We're doing a gig week after next with Ray Thistlethwaite.
Oh, yeah.
Thirsty Merc guy with us. So he comes and does a thing with us sometimes.
Yeah. Are you on Instagram at all?
No.
Ray Thistlethwaite has one of the funniest Instagram accounts.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, if you ever get a chance to browse any of this stuff, it's just all off the cuff and hilarious.
I see some of his Facebook things.
Similar sort of stuff.
Fast-minded guy.
Fast-minded. If something just pops in his head, he just picks up the phone and, it'll be next morning straight after a gig and he'll just ramble. It's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He loves that. He loves playing that game with himself. Just think fast and see what happens.
See what happens. Yeah. But he's getting a little bit more popular out of it too.
Is he? Right,
yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Awesome musician, eh?
Brilliant guy.
Yeah. Are you teaching?
I am.
Yep.
I teach quite a bit. I teach here.
Yep.
And I teach for the Conservatorium Music.
Yep.
For the jazz department there, I teach the sort of bass.
Yep.
One-on-ones. I teach for UNSW, University of New South Wales, and actually on Wednesdays I teach out at a Catholic boys' high school for half a day as well.
Right.
So I do a reasonable amount of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So the music you're teaching at the con.
Yeah.
Is that like a set syllabus or?
It's sort of both.
By yourself or by the con that you're having to teach these? I don't know.
I have nothing to do with setting the syllabus at all.
Okay.
They do have a set list of, I think, jazz standards or something that they have to check out.
Right.
And then I just do what's called instrumental studies, where it's just bass guitarists, because they have a double bass person as well, Craig Scott, which I don't teach. And they do whatever they want with me, really, though. They don't necessarily go through those tunes with me. They can if they want to. Some of them do, and some of them just have other whole loads of questions, or they're just interested to see what I might be able to show them that they hadn't thought of themselves.
Right, that's cool.
And just sort of grab from me what they can, and grab from another person whatever they can,
That's cool. Is it like that at the uni as well, or?
Well, it's part of Sydney Uni.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the Conservatorium is part of Sydney Uni.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So it's it's a good gig actually. I like teaching there, and they're mostly the kind of most enthusiastic students, sort of young players, sort of 20 years of age, around sort of 18 to 25 sort of years of age, and they're into it and they've got time to practice. And
right.
I I like that sort of...
That's rewarding teaching.
Yeah, man, it really is, yeah.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's roll back to early days. You were born in Kent, England.
I was born in Kent, in England. In
the year of the Fender, is that right?
The year of the Fender Jazz. The year of the Fender jazz was invented, that's right. Yeah. In Kent, southeast England in 1960, yeah. And emigrated here.
Yep. Well, let's stay back in England for a bit. So what was it like growing up?
It was
it music?
It was...
Musical around? Sorry, mother and father musical?
My mother's side of the family's musical. All the uncles sort of played a bit of guitar. None of them were professionals, but they played a bit of guitar. My mum played piano. There was an actor in there, and this sort of creative side of the family, you know. My grandfather played some cello. But yeah, they're all sort of self-taught. So we had a piano in the house growing up, which I diddled around on, but didn't have any, you know, formal lessons or anything. But I was pretty good at picking out melodies and things like that.
Right.
A lot of music in the house. My dad didn't play music, but they played music a lot around, you know, records in the house.
What kind of stuff? Vast variety.
Pretty varied. Stuff? Yeah, pretty varied. Like,
yep.
Which I think is probably the case with most families around that time, especially the kind of where I was. They had like maybe 30 LPs or something, but they would be really varied. There'd be like some musicals, like, I don't know, like West Side Story or something, and then there would be some Beatles, some Bill Haley and the Comets. There'd be like Burt Bacharach, and even a little bit of classical stuff like, well, strangely, they had Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, Peter and the Wolf. Yeah, so it was pretty... Some of that British, that sort of pommy jazz thing, like Kenny Ball and his Jazzmen, a little bit of that. Yeah, so, yeah, that pretty much.
And of course, the Beatles, eh?
And yeah, that was omnipresent, yeah.
Yep.
No. I mean, from the time I was about 5, I remember them being, you know, just present everywhere. It's sort of part of the fabric of life. It's hard to imagine, but yeah, it was. They were just so much a part of the fabric. Well, probably of everywhere, but in England particularly, you know. And I remember me and my brothers wanting to have our hair cut like the Beatles, and we wanted to have Beatle boots, you know, with a pointy kind of toe.
Yep.
It was, so that was really, and the Kinks too, actually.
Yeah, right.
Because they were the South, you know, where I'm from. And the Kinks, they was. I think my mum really liked the Kinks more than the Beatles, and my dad liked the Beatles more. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you have that moment where you got to see the Beatles perform live on Ed Sullivan's show?
No,
you didn't see that. Okay.
I didn't.
I've heard that so many times.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if it had the impact.
It didn't have the impact. No,
Yeah,
I never remember that particular impact. The big impact I remember actually from watching TV, the one that just sort of made my hair stand on end, was in 1970, so I would have been 10, and it was David Bowie doing Ground Control to Major Tom.
Yeah, right.
And that went on, and something just, you know, just blew me away.
Yep.
You know, it's after that countdown bit in it, you know. This is Ground Control. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
That really blew me away. And
the sax.
Yeah,
straight after the count. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, that really knocked me out.
Right.
That's the sort of that kind of moment you're talking about. If there was ever that moment, it would have been that Bowie song. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
But you know, actually talking about this stuff is interesting because even though we were 25-minute drive away from all that. London, where I grew up, was 25-minute drive from London. Thinking about it later, like, I don't know, even though it was that close, it was hard to imagine myself becoming a musician because those people seemed like they were from Mars.
Oh, right.
Even though they were from just up the road.
Yeah.
So that was kind of that was what was an interesting thing about arriving in Australia. I was 15 when I got here. Is because you'd see these people on telly, like, say, Sherbet or someone. Right. And then you'd see them, they were at the pub around the corner.
So
it was very close. And you go, oh, that's those dudes that were on Countdown. And they're just there, and they just seem like regular dags, just like I was. And it seemed like, I don't know, it made it more real somehow that that you could be a musician yourself, and you didn't have to be like from Mars, you know.
So did that like scare you off?
Well, it didn't. It wasn't that it scared me off, because at 10 I wasn't really thinking about being a musician anyway. But I think it wouldn't. Yeah, maybe it would have. I mean, I don't know if scared me off would have been the way to put it, but just not real, because I'm from a working class environment, and you know, most of the people that were around where I was were manual workers, you know.
Yep.
And they didn't dress like David Bowie or Mark Bolan. Or, you know. Yeah. It's kind of, so it wouldn't have seemed reasonable for somebody from that sort of environment to suddenly go, oh, I'm going to be a musician, you know.
Right.
That's just something you do at home.
Right. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So Australia really maybe made that sort of somehow more reachable. Right. And available to sort of go, well, maybe I can join a band, maybe I can form a band, maybe I can write music, you know, that kind of thing. Which is really a good thing. All right.
So, was it always bass?
Yeah.
Right. So
it was bass from the start.
Do you want to talk about that moment you
and
first saw a bass? Did you see it or did you hear
it? It was
a bass?
Definite moment, man. It was very shortly after getting here. And I got here a month before I turned 15. And the first kid I met here became friends with the first Australian kid. We wagged off school together and hung out at his house because his parents were out during the day. And he had a bass guitar. And it was him and another kid and me. We wagged school. And I picked up his bass guitar and started mucking around on it. And both of the Australian kids said, oh, did you used to play bass in England? I said, no, I'd never picked one up in my life. I never had. And they didn't believe me. Right. And I noticed it, you know, and I thought, oh, they think that I've done this before, you know. Maybe I've got a little bit of a thing. And thankfully the moment wasn't lost on me, you know. I kind of, I got a bass really quite shortly after. Right. And so that was a defining moment. That was probably the defining moment in sort of so thoroughly choosing to go with that instrument, you know. Right. Yeah. So when you were first picked up that bass and playing, were you? What do you think made them think that you'd played before? Were you playing? Because I was physically really comfortable on it. Right. Okay. So you probably looked like you were. Yeah. I think it was a look. I got big hands. Yeah. Right. And I kind of could make it sound like something. Right. Okay. Cool. Even though there was no particular tune or anything, it sort of sounded like semi-convincing to somebody that didn't know anything. Fake it for a bit. Yeah. That's awesome. How'd you go about getting your first bass? I just I saved up a little bit of money and I got a $80 bass from a local hock shop. Right. Do you remember what it was? Yeah, it was an Emperador precision bass copy. Right. It wasn't too bad. Right. I didn't hang on to it, but it wasn't actually too bad. Right. And then I hang on to that for a little while, then got Fenders and other things. Yeah. Yep. Now, what were you listening to music-wise at that time? Well, I'll just jump back into England a little bit here because the couple of years before I left England, I was already going out around town. I was out of the house very young. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, so they kind of let me run pretty wild. Okay. Even all this shit, these tattoos and stuff I had all over me when I was 13. Okay. And I was running around, you know, and I was really into reggae music and ska music and black music, essentially, soul music. I used to go and dance to that and try and meet girls and whatnot. So I was very into that, and I had a fairly decent record collection of that music. And then when I got here, none of the kids I met in the suburbs of Sydney were into that music or liked that music or knew about that music. It was all kind of Black Sabbath, Deep Purple, Pink Floyd. It was English bands. Right. So I started getting a little bit into these English bands that I wasn't into when I was in England. I suppose just sort of trying to sort of understand where I was really in Australia, what this culture was about, you know. And Supertramp, there was their first couple of records, like Crime of the Century, I really liked that. And then Jeff Beck was the big changing point. I went to see Jeff Beck here in 1976 with the Jan Hammer Group. Right. And that blew me away, and I knew that was with a guy called Fernando Saunders on bass, and that was the point where I knew sort of a direction of music that I wanted to chase and get into. And then through that Jeff Beck stuff, it just opened up the floodgates into the whole jazz rock thing, you know.
Because I was going to ask you if you had like a cornerstone album, meaning was there an album that sort of set you on a direction, but that kind of sounds like a cornerstone.
Yeah, probably Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow would be the first one, and then Black Market by Weather Report, I guess, would be the second one.
Yep.
Yeah, they would be them, I suppose. Yeah. And I still dial up tracks from those albums too, you know.
Yeah.
Just, you're on YouTube and just feel like, I just want to listen to, you know, the tune called Diamond Dust off Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow. So beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So, did you go about self-teaching yourself, or was it straight away try and find a teacher that...
I just taught myself.
Taught yourself?
Yeah.
Has that always been the case?
It's always been the case. I'm self-taught, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was a swimmer for a few years, a competitive swimmer, like every day before school and every day after school.
Oh, right.
Competitive racing on the weekends and stuff. And I just basically applied that to myself.
Yeah, right.
Which is, they do your pulse rate and you have target times and you have targets and you just drill, basically drilling.
Right.
If your race is 100 metres, you do 100 metres. You just keep doing 100 metres and you time it, you know. And so that was all I knew, really. So I applied it. At first, I just applied a sort of sporting concept to it, really.
To your practice?
Yeah.
Right.
And sitting in a chair with a bass for 5 hours is a piece of piss compared to swimming up and down a pool for 3 hours, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So sitting in a chair with a bass, and still to me now, like I'll sit here right where we are now, and next thing I know, it's 4 o'clock in the morning, you know. Just be playing.
Yeah.
So it was always very easy for me to just sit and be with the bass for hours on end and just run things and practice stuff, you know. So yeah, I'm self-taught, yeah.
Right. So how did you pick up the theory of things then?
Just a few books, and also had a lot of friends that were that started going to the conservatorium and things like that.
Yeah.
And so I'd figured things out, and then they'd say, "Oh, that's called a diminished scale or whatever," you know. Or, that's called that, then I'd sort of go, "Oh yeah, right, I see."
Right.
So I just sort of put the names to things, and then I've bought a few. I don't have many books. I mean, you see there that in 45 years plus of playing bass, that's my entire load of books. I don't have that many, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I write out exercises, just reams of stuff here that I just write out for myself and practice, you know.
Right. And do you read now? Can you start read now?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Not as well as I probably could sight read better in the late 70s, early 80s when I used to do some cabaret shows and things, you know, backing acts and those things, where you're sort of doing it a lot.
It's something you've got to stay on, eh?
Yeah, I think so, man. And then after about 25, I stopped doing those gigs, and then I was in bands where people just let me make up whatever I wanted to most of the time. So I was free to just create, you know. So the reading was mostly just rhythm slashes and not pages full of dots.
Right. Do you remember your first band playing with other people?
Yeah, the first gig was when I was 17. I moved into the city when I was 16 from my family and left home pretty early, 16, and moved into the city, into Paddington. Lived in a little boarding house type place, and I met a dude who played sort of classical. Well, he had been a classical guitarist, but he played a sort of a Brazilian classical guitar sort of style thing, and he wrote his own tunes. And the first gigs I did were with him, just a duet, and I just put basically he would play the chord and I'd say, what notes are in the chord? And then he would tell me and I would sort of juggle around with those notes and make my own bass lines up to his tunes. The sort of classical Brazilian sounding things. And we played at a venue called the Roxy, which was at the Five Ways in Paddington.
Right.
And they were the very first gigs when I was 17. And then I formed my own band when I was 18.
Yeah, right.
Formed my own band, yeah. So I'd started writing some tunes, and so I thought that's what you did. You write some tunes and you form a band and you go and get a gig. So that's
right.
And Tony Buck was the first. You know Tony Buck?
No.
He's a drummer for a band called the Necks.
Right.
It's a well-known Australian kind of music. It's not really jazz. It's sort of a music, but they're very successful. And he was the drummer. So I started off with a really good drummer. He was 16 and he turned up with a Billy Cobham double bass drum kit and everything. So he was the drummer in my first band.
Right.
Yeah.
Were you gigging with your band?
Not much.
Not much.
But we rehearsed. We rehearsed
Yeah.
a real lot. You know, we were playing. Tony's father worked in the office block in town with a free basement. Big, I guess it was like a car park, but it wasn't used. So we had our stuff permanently set up there.
Oh, cool.
We go in there almost every night and just play, you know. And actually, it was in the basement, right next door to the basement.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was great, Reby Place. So we would go and practice there and then go into the basement and, you know, absorb that music that was going on.
Right, and what sort of bands were coming through the basement at that stage?
Well, Crossfire was there, and Galapagos Duck, I suppose. Those kind of bands, Renee Geyer would have been there. And then they had a lot of visiting acts too, visiting bands from mostly America, I suppose, and Europe and England. Yeah, it was good time.
How did you start getting into the gigging bands, the commercial type bands? Not when I mean commercial, I don't mean like pop, but just because we were talking before about that sort of heyday.
Yeah.
How did you sort of get yourself into the scene where you were sort of playing in bands that were playing often, as well as still having your band?
Yeah, right. Well, a guitar player, a couple of the people I used to work with, like a guitar player, Gayle Moran, who was later in the Eurogliders and Ian Moss's guitar. He was Ian Moss's rhythm guitarist and played some jazz and things. He's a friend and he had a band, so I was in his band. And he got a gig on a ship, so went on a ship. And then it was a fairly short stint, like a couple of months maybe. And then the horn player, the original horn player from Crossfire was Don Reed. He went on for one cruise, I think, just to play with us. And he really liked my playing, and so he recommended me for then this other singer's band, a woman called Wendy Gross, and in her band was Jim Kelly on guitar, you know, from Crossfire, and Dave Fennell, the piano player, and John Proud, the original Crossfire drummer, was in it. So I got to play with these guys from Crossfire. So I was like 20, and the piano player I mentioned in that, Dave Fennell, did a lot of writing for jingles and things. So he started booking me for some sessions, and then through that I got the saxophone player Ken James saw me and I joined his quintet. Played a lot. In King's Cross we had a regular gig at a place called the Paradise. Actually, man, we had a regular gig at the Paradise on Fridays, a regular gig at a place called Red Ned's in Chatswood on Thursdays, a place called Blades in Manly on Sundays, and then I was in Errol Buttle's regular band at the Sue Plus on Saturdays. So I was 21 at that time.
Right.
So it was an amazing...
Yeah.
And all these fellas were 15, 20 years older than I am.
Wow, what an experience.
So it's just fantastic. Like, we learned so much, and, you know, that stuff that there's no substitution for that, you know.
Yeah, that's it.
So it was a really good an incredible learning curve. My playing has never changed and grown that much as it did in those few years.
Right.
It's sort of incremental. Now. Every
Right.
5 years maybe now I notice maybe there's a glimmer of a change.
Right.
But it was just rocketing back then.
Right.
From that, yeah.
In what kind of way?
Just sort of maturity, like maturing and knowing when to. Well, it took a bit longer than that to know when to shut up. Because
I think your style of playing is not sort of meant to be shut up,
Yeah, it served me well and served me not. That's a double-edged sword, that thing.
Okay.
And I accept that.
So in saying that, did you get onto gigs where you didn't stay on those gigs because they thought that you were overplaying? Did you have those situations?
No. They just some they were kind.
Awesome.
They just sort of said, "Hey, Steve, man, you're sounding good, but you play too much there. Like just shut up a bit." Or how about like the first 3 choruses you just play like half as much, and then put on the heat a little bit.
Yeah.
So they were mostly kind, and they understood I was a 20-year-old. But I suppose they saw, that I had some ability and stuff, and they were kind. The same way I am. If I hire a young dude now, if I get a young drummer now, and sometimes that's happened quite a lot in the last 40 years, where I've got a musician that's substantially younger than me, and I can almost tell they're going, I'm doing Steve's gig. It's a fusion gig. I can play everything I've ever wanted to play on every other gig.
Yeah, right.
And in a way, they sort of can, but it's like, well, hang on, man. You'll get plenty of space, or you'll get plenty of room to play on my gig. But let's just sit back on it for a bit. Let's just simmer and not burn all the time.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, during this time, your own band is still cooking away.
Yep.
When did you start recording with your own band?
Well, I did a couple of demos, but the first album I did under my own name was 1986. So I was 25.
Okay.
And I had a bunch of tunes, and I had a band that had been going for a while. And it was a cool band, it was a good band. It was Andy Gander on drums, and Carl Orr on guitar, Craig Walters on saxophone, Kevin Hunt on keyboards, and myself. And we went in and made an LP.
Right.
Yeah.
That's self-funded?
Yeah.
Yep.
Did the whole lot for $4,000.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
A lot of money back then,
It
though.
wasn't quite a lot of money, but it was what I figured, it was just something I'd wanted. Again, it was coming back to that almost like naivety, where I always thought that's what you do. You learn an instrument, you write stuff, you form a band, you record music, you put it into the world to see what may or may not happen.
And what happened?
I pressed 1,000 LPs and sold them.
Yeah, right.
And that was good. That was cool. I was happy with that.
What about playing and touring off the back of that? Was there a scene for you?
I didn't even try.
Okay.
I didn't have the kind of. I didn't have the business chops, or the sort of. I suppose I definitely would have liked to, but I still didn't have the. The chops to sort of business-wise to sort of. Beyond getting on the phone to local gigs, really, and getting them. Then a few years later, I did. A few years later, I did, other albums and was getting other help and had record labels and that kind of thing,
Now, you got to play with Billy Cobham.
Yeah.
Right. So how did that come about?
That came about. Carl Orr rang me to do it. So I'm not sure how it came about on his play.
What year was this?
1990.
1990, okay.
Yeah. And he just rang me up one day and said, "Hey, man, do you want to do some gigs with Billy Cobham?" I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, Billy's coming out here in April." And we got the gig. I was like, "Man, great, fantastic." So that was it. And Billy came, and sure enough, we rehearsed and did the gigs.
Right.
It was amazing.
What's he like as a person?
He's a nice man. He's sort of, he was nice. He was cool. He was great.
Yeah.
Not incredibly talkative or anything, you know.
Right.
And he let you interpret the music, you know. Like, I knew the music pretty well because a lot of the stuff we were playing was from that Spectrum album of his, which is such a classic.
Yeah.
So I'd sort of played some of those tunes myself before and was familiar with the ones that I hadn't played. And but he was great. He was fantastic. It was just really like playing with any good drummer, man. It's always just a pleasure.
Right.
It's easy playing with good drummers, I think.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you about drummers. I tell you my Billy Cobham story.
No.
How I met him. It was 1995, and it was Sydney Festival.
Yeah.
And Billy came out to Sydney to do a gig at the Basement. And I'd only been in Australia for a month, and my mate says, Billy Cobham's playing down the Basement, you know. I reckon if we go down and we hang by the steps, we'll be able to get in. So we went and sat on the side.
Yeah, I do. Those steps that go down.
Goes down, yeah. So we sat on the steps and we waited there and waited. Anyway, this black van pulls up and the doors open and this little bit of an entourage walks out, and Billy walks out. He's got a towel, big glasses, and as he's walking down the stairs, my mate says, hey man, can we come and watch your show? And he goes, have you paid?
Right.
And we went, nah, and he just went, just laughed at us and walked in, shut the doors, and that was it. So we didn't even stick around. We were so embarrassed, you know. So yeah. So anyway, fair call though, you know.
Yeah.
I think he'd pretty much sold that Basement out that day, you know. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you look for in a drummer? What's what are the qualities? What don't you like? What do you like?
I don't have a fixed idea about it.
Okay.
And I'm not crazy about, when somebody, sometimes you get somebody who kind of goes, that seems to have a fixed idea about what a fusion style is, let's say.
Yep.
I don't really like that so much. I don't like it so much when I can hear somebody's going, this is my fusion style. This is my disco. This is my jazz style.
I gotcha.
I don't like that so much. When I can hear, it's fusion lick number 14, you know. I don't like that so much. It doesn't. That often sort of makes me not feel the best.
A little bit generic.
Yeah, I kind of like it when somebody's just got their bag of weird shit that they've put together that sort of sounds cool. And that, by definition, is fusion anyway, because they've just grabbed a bit from here and a bit from here. And that sort of... I often like drummers that sound a bit like that.
Right.
But other than that, I don't have... I just like it to feel good with what I do, and obviously I want it to feel vice versa for them. So that can be a weird one, you know. Like it doesn't even mean that obviously that. I mean, they might even be a fantastic drummer, but it just doesn't, for whatever reason, sit with what I do. But they might sound great with somebody else, you know. Like, and you can see that in real high level players too. Like, there's a reason why there are no records with Jaco Pastorius and Vinnie Colaiuta.
Yeah, right.
You know?
Yeah.
There's a reason why and yet there's these fast light drummers, like the way Erskine often played, sort of fast and light, or Alex Acuna, that fitted so beautifully with what Jaco did.
Right.
And then there's other bass players that sound so incredible with what Vinnie does.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, that sort of thing. So it's just sort of that thing of finding, you know, drummers that sort of just feel good to me. But having said that, you know, I've played with so many amazing drummers that they're probably just so damn good that they can make me sound good.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
They just and because because a lot of the guys that I've played with, like Andrew Gander and David Jones and Virgil and Gordon and I know shitloads of bass players that say exactly, oh man, he makes me play so good.
Yep.
But those bass players don't play the same way I play, so that says a lot about how great those drummers are actually. Yeah.
So you had was Jack Jones, yourself, and Virgil in a trio. So how did that come about?
That was through a bass, I think, or a drum and bass sort of equipment company, bizzo thing, I think, from Melbourne, where whoever was doing Virgil's drums at the time, I had a thing at the time with Trace Elliott bass amps.
Yep.
And Virgil, I don't know who his drum company was, and they sort of suggested this would be a good sort of Sydney, Melbourne thing.
Cool. Yeah.
So we put a trio together, and then it was good. And so we did it a few more times too. And I'd fly down there and do some shows and we play some originals of mine, some of originals of Virgil's, and then a few sort of John Schofield tunes or something as well.
Right.
It was good. It was great fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you played with David.
I played with David a real lot.
Yep.
Yeah, for about a decade.
Yeah, right.
And toured with him a lot. Like, I think firstly there's a guitar player called Guy Straz, or Strazzulo as he was known, and we did a couple of albums with Guy and toured Indonesia and Australia a lot. And then I had a band called Palladium. You know John Foreman,
piano player.
Yeah, was with him. Like he was like 20.
Must have been very young.
Yeah, he was like 20.
Yeah.
And the guitar player Guy Leclerc and David and I, we did an album with that band called Palladium. And then I formed a band called Tree, which went for 6 years with Kevin Hunt and David Jones. Right. And both those guys had like an Econovan or Econovans. So we were forever up and down between Brisbane and Melbourne in one of those two guys' vans.
Right.
The whole trio and we book a pretty solid string of gigs, between Brisbane and Melbourne, and we were up and down pretty much constantly, And that band did 2 albums as well. So a real lot of playing with David, and then I formed that band I think in '94. And he, I think he moved back to Melbourne in about '99, and we kept it going for a little while after he moved back to Melbourne. But we kind of tailed off a bit after that. So it was a real good run with David. I loved playing with David a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a special player, eh?
Yeah, man, really original. Just like what we were talking about before. Like there's a guy that's just grabbed things from all over the place. It just sounds like David.
Yep.
And it's so beautiful to play with.
Yep.
And Andy Gander's probably the drummer that I've done the most gigs with.
Right.
So I've done gigs with him going back from '83 right up till 2 years ago.
Right.
It's like literally probably more than 1,000 gigs.
Right.
And he's on like 5 of my albums.
Yep.
So he's the guy that I've probably grown up playing with the most, from the age of 23 right up to sort of mid-50s.
Right.
So, yeah, he's the guy that I'm sort of probably closest to in a way. Mm-hmm. But yeah, David's magic.
Yeah. Yeah, Gordy talks a lot about
David. Well, he was a big mentor for David, yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. And
for Gordon, I mean.
Yeah. But, Gordy was saying, the stuff, like the stuff you're kind of hearing now from some people, different types of playing with, different things on drums and using different sticks and stuff like that. It's kind of coming to the forefront now, but David was doing that stuff way back.
Yeah, 30 years ago. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was fascinating.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Thongs on sticks and
dish
mops and
all
sorts of stuff, yeah. Ping pong balls on sort of...
on the skewers.
Skewers.
Yeah, and you go, whoa,
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're original dude.
Yeah. All right, so that must have been around that sort of heyday period in the 90s.
Yeah.
How many gigs were you playing a week, do you reckon?
I reckon 3, 4 I mean, these are all gigs that, you know, music that I was sort of heavily involved with, you know.
Right.
Mostly writing for.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd say about four a week.
Right.
Yeah. I had a real lot of the Harborside Brasserie. I was in Carl Orr's band there and my own band there. Dale Barlow's band.
Was that with Gordy?
I was in Gordon would have done it sometimes.
Yep.
Dale used to use a lot of different people, you know. So I did it sometimes. Adam Armstrong played bass in it sometimes. Steve McKenna I played with sometimes. Sometimes with Gordon. Steve McKenna's band, that was a good... Steve, I don't know if you know Steve McKenna, but...
I don't.
Great guitar player, yeah.
Yep.
Passed away a couple of years ago.
Right.
But he was a great player. And it was just a great period. Yeah, Jackie Ozowski had his regular band down there on the Saturday nights. It was a good scene. And then I had a regular gig at a place called the Strawberry Hills Hotel, Surrey Hills. I got a regular Thursday night there, which I had for ages. And that went for ages. That was just playing my stuff. And I was also in a saxophone player called Mark Simmons, who's a bit of a legendary Australian sort of jazz dude. I was in his band, playing a sort of more jazz end of the thing, not so much electric end of the thing. Right. So I was playing more the jazz end of it. And in a way, my focus shifted a little bit. I mean, it's a bit overly simplified maybe, but a lot of what I started to get into, the way I started to think about playing was a little bit more jazz rock rather than rock jazz, if you get what I mean, you know, sort of thinking about that improvisational end of it a lot more. And in a way, I still kind of lean towards that end of it.
Right.
Sort of, it's a bit more elastic, a bit more jazz-oriented than... There's very, very little sort of West Coast fusion vibe in what I do. There's probably none of that, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
What about fretless? Were you playing fretless?
Yeah, I did. I played fretless really early. I played one for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, right.
And then,
what,
you know...
solely fretless?
Yeah, only fretless.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then I was kind of... I mean, I copped a lot from Jacko, you know. And then I thought, oh, man, you know... I want to get away from some of this, you know, because I was pretty good at mimicking it, you know. Also, I kind of actually realised that the area of what he was doing, because there's a lot of areas to Jacko, you know, and a lot of what I was interested in, what he was doing, was actually more like a woody kind of sound, and the clarity of the lines. I wasn't so much into the whole sort of a remark you made, sliding around element of it, actually. That wasn't the prime thing about him for me. It was more just the clarity lines, and the percussion and the notes and the quality of the lines, you know, the stuff he came up with. So, and then I found that I could do that on a fretted bass anyway. I can kind of make a fretted bass sort of sound fretless.
Yeah, actually. Yeah.
So...
That's by playing your hand right back towards the...
Yeah, it is. And left-hand technique, just having your left hand sort of tucked in right at the back of the fret, you know.
Yeah, right.
And actually, even now to this day, people at gigs come up and say, "Oh man, have you got fret markers?" They think that this is...
It's fretless.
It's fret, yeah, because I've got the markers in there, you know.
Yeah.
It's fret markers.
Yeah.
They think it's fretless, but... Yeah, it's not. Yeah, and it's great, which is great because you don't end up with a intonation problem, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I did play it for 5 years, I think.
Yeah, right.
From the age of sort of 19 through to 23, 24 or something. Yeah.
You've played a bit abroad.
Yeah. I have.
I know you've played Asia,
a lot,
India and stuff like
that. A real lot in Asia, yeah.
Did you ever get back across to Europe or get into the States or?
I was in the States. I was in and out of the States a lot in the early 90s. Again, I was sort of just in and out a real lot and meeting people and doing some gigs, you know, with some people over there and.
You're trying to get into the session scene there? Were you playing?
I wasn't trying to get into session scene. I was just sort of trying to get to meet some of the people and play with some of the people in my record collection, really.
Right.
And I did.
So East Coast or West Coast?
I was going to the West Coast.
Right.
Because I think at that time, it was still a bit more delineated. Like the electric stuff was sort of West Coast, and the acoustic jazz thing, bebop, I guess, stuff coming out of post bebop was New York. I think it's all a little bit more integrated now, but at that time, it just seemed like, you know, if you wanted to play the electric stuff, the West Coast was where it was. And the guys I was sort of interested in, like Chick Corea and Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter and Alan Holdsworth and Scott Henderson and those kind of people, they were all on the West Coast. So so that's where I kind of focused a little bit.
Did you ever play upright bass?
No.
Always been electric.
Yeah, I had a shot at it. Like, well, I had a friend leave me one. A bass player friend, who did a tour. He went on tour playing his electric, and he left his acoustic bass with me for like 4 months while he was away on his tour, just to look after it, really.
Right.
And sort of check it out if I wanted to while he was away, and which I did, and I just quickly realised it was a completely different beast.
Yeah.
And even though there are those people like, you know, like John Patitucci, who can be amazing on both, I just knew pretty quickly that I just felt like if I was going to be on this, I'd be robbing time from the electric and vice versa. So I pretty quickly made the decision. I'm just going to, you know, I'd end up, I think, sounding half-assed on both, you know.
Right.
And I would rather. And plus, I love the electric bass. So
So, speaking of Patitucci, I'll try that again. Speaking of Patitucci, and you also mentioned Chick Corea before. You played with Chick Corea.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I did. Yeah.
Right. Now, around what time?
That was first time was 89.
Yep.
And then again in 90, late 90. Yeah, which was an amazing experience, you know. Like, yeah, I'd been writing to him since I was like 17.
Yeah, right.
I wrote to all those guys.
That's cool.
Because at that time, you could, remember on the LP covers, a lot of them had places where you could sort of write to them.
Send fan letters and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I used to write to all of them. I don't even know why, really. I don't know what I was expecting. But he was one of the ones that wrote back. Some of them would write back like just, like send like a glossy photo of themselves signed or something, you know, like Stanley Clarke did that.
Yeah.
It's like, Stanley. But Chick Corea, you know, he wrote back and it was sort of an encouraging letter, you know, like I sent him a cassette, you know, and it was sort of an encouraging letter and stuff. And then I send more, you know, and he encouraged me to send other stuff, you know, and which I did. And then I established this sort of mail, you know, relationship by mail. And then I went to I did an album called Home Base in 1988, and it was really well recorded. Did it at 301, and
your album.
Yeah, it was my album called Home Base. Yeah,
Home Base,
and was beautifully recorded and had Andy on drums and Dale Barlow, and I wrote these nice, sort of very concise tunes. And actually, thinking back on it, quite a few of them were quite Chick Corea sort of oriented, you know. And I went to LA and I met his manager, and then Chick invited me to do this one gig, which I did, and then he invited me to do like 3 or 4 others, and the Electric Band was already happening at this time, so these were gigs. These were gigs that were while the Electric Band wasn't playing. They were just billed as Chick Corea and Friends, and it had Tommy Breckline on drums. Do you know Tom Breckline?
Yeah.
He was the drummer. I've got recordings of those gigs actually.
Oh, wicked.
Yeah, desk tapes, you know, that were on cassette that I've got transferred onto the CD. And Tom Breckline was on drums, and Mark Isham played electric trumpet. It was fantastic, man, and he invited me to contribute a tune to the tour, you know, to the trip, and then so it's just a little circuit, just a handful of gigs, and then we did exactly the same circuit the following year, exactly a year later. So
this is flying in and out.
Yeah, and I was in and out quite a lot.
Right.
And I did gigs with Maxine Nightingale in that time. You remember she had a famous song called, I think it was I Never Can Say Goodbye. Was that her?
Oh, yeah, yep.
And Gayle Moran, did some gigs with Gayle Moran. She's Chick's wife. She was also in the Mahavishnu Orchestra. Did some gigs with her. Some other, so I got to do a few things, But at the time, I had one young kid already. Okay. I had a 4-year-old already by that time, and then was expecting another kid. And the wife I was with at the time, we were kind of talking about maybe relocating to Los Angeles, and I just started thinking, man, like, I don't think I want to live in this place, It just was so far removed from where I grew up. And it's so far removed from, that whole thing of sort of, oh, hi, so your name's Steve, and you play bass, and I have a nephew called Nathan who plays bass. You guys should really hook up. And it's kind of, that way of talking and being is just so far from my psyche, Right. And I just thought, man, I can't pretend that I want to be here, as much as I kind of want to be around some of these people.
Yeah.
And I just made the decision that I wanted to live here. I knew I didn't want to live in England. I didn't want to live, and it wasn't worth sort of going to live in Kentucky or something.
Right.
If I was going to be in America, it would have
been LA or nothing.
Been LA really at the time.
Yep.
And I just made the decision. I want to be here. I like living in Australia, and that if anything, is going to happen outside of these shores with my so-called career, it's going to happen. It's going to happen from here. And if it doesn't, fuck it. I mean, I'm still getting to play with Andrew Gander and David Jones and James Muller and anyway, I mean, it doesn't. I'm happy to play. Yeah. I'm completely happy playing with those people.
Yep.
So I get to do what I get to write my music, record my music, go and play with my band and do my shit anyway. Yeah. I don't need to be in Los Angeles really to do that. And a certain quality of life is really important to. I think it's important to everyone. I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but it's really important to me and how I feel about my life and my music.
Yeah, I was going to say, sort of stunt the creativity a bit,
Yeah. And the social veneer in Los Angeles is really thick, Yeah,
right.
It's really thick.
Right.
And I'm not a fan of it. And I'm not good at pretending.
That's a good thing.
I'm just not good at it.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once you made that decision that I don't want to live here anymore, when you left, did you ever go back?
To LA?
Yeah, or was that it?
Well, I can't... No, I probably didn't actually.
Yeah.
I don't think I did.
Yep.
No. But I did go... I went to Europe. I went and lived in Spain for a year.
Right.
Which was a different trip again.
What did you do
That was
there?
a bit later, that was in 2004.
Right.
Well, and I suppose there's a bunch of stuff that happened before 2004, but because I'm not really a holiday person, I don't really do holidays. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was fairly new, in a newish relationship with my wife now. We've been together for 17 years now. But she had a thing that was based out of Malaga University in Spain, and which was going to take a year. And I thought, well, why don't I take a year out and just go and hang with her and just have a change of scenery, because I hadn't done it for so long. And I love flamenco music, and I've been involved with bands that are... I don't claim to be a well-studied flamenco musician. Again, it's just stuff that I've grabbed from Paco de Lucia and Chick Corea, and I've got a little bit of a feeling for that music. So I thought that would be interesting. Go and live in Andalusia for a year and just absorb a bit of that vibe.
Get your ass kicked.
Yeah,
By the pros.
Yeah, and just experience something different for a year. So that was kind of nice, just being being in Europe, and I've got the English passport, of course, so I could do that. You know, I could live there and hang there, and didn't need any visas or anything like that.
That's cool.
Yeah, and as it happened at the time, I kind of I could afford it because I'd just got this really great thing from the Australia Council called an artist fellowship, which was $80,000.
Fuck.
Yeah, it was, which they grant to people that have done, you know, that have done a lot and under their own steam, and are likely to do more. And I've noticed actually that they nearly always gave it to people in their sort of early 40s, which I was at the time, because I guess they figure he's got 20 years of shit behind him, and he's probably got another 20 years in front of him, you know.
Right.
So I know about 10 guys that have been awarded that, and they were all between 40 and 45. So I got that, and just as it happened, they awarded me that just at the time when so I could actually afford to just go and live somewhere for a year. Right. And I went and wrote a whole load of music, and you know, I didn't waste the time at all. I just wrote a whole load of music. I came back and did an album, you know, of music that I'd written while I was there, and all that. But that was really nice, just to take a bit of time out.
So that grant.
Yeah.
Was there any obligation?
It's not really technically a grant, actually, Steve. It's just called a fellowship, which means there are not exact criteria that you have to fulfill. Like usually when you get a grant, you have to say, I'm going to spend $40 on this and $100 on the studio.
I want you to give me an album.
Yeah.
So nothing like that. It's just thank you for what you've done, and hopefully you can do some more.
Yeah, a little bit more than that. It's here's an acknowledgement for what you've done, and also, but you sort of outlay some plans. So you say, well, I did an album of songs, for example, I used 7 different singers on it, and I wrote a load of songs with vocals, and it was nothing to do with sort of fusion and jazz and whatever.
Right.
And I did a quartet record, which was open blowing sort of thing, and presented some other concerts with a larger group, and so I did things. I did do things with it, and then there were things that. But you're also allowed to fail with this particular thing, you know, where you say, "Well, I tried that, and that didn't really work."
Did you have to show that?
You do submit a what do you call it? At the end, can't even think what the damn thing's
called. Like a review type.
Yeah,
thing.
Yeah, at the very end of it, and but it's not sort of saying, "Well, this." You know, I bought this box of tea bags for that session. You know, it's not, you're not having to account for it. It's more open than that, and you're allowed to fail on certain things. Well, I tried this and it didn't work, and I tried that, and here's the result. I'd send them some CDs and whatnot that I did do with the money, and also it's okay to use some of that money just to live. Yeah. Because just to live for. Say 3 months, if you wanted to write, say, some big band charts or something, you know, you can use it for food. Right. It's perfectly okay within the confine, the parameters of that that particular dosh, you know.
Right. Do they still give those things now?
Yeah.
Right.
It's $100,000 now.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's still around. I think it's like a couple of years ago. It's usually one to a jazz sort of oriented person and one to a classical person, maybe. Right. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think that's...
So they stay away from the pop rock kind of thing?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't. I don't know.
Maybe they think that's not art.
Yeah, maybe they think that's not art. Yeah, quite probably. And maybe mistakenly or not, they think that there are other areas that are injecting money into that.
Gotcha.
But I don't know if there are, because I'm not really involved in the sort of pop commercial music scene. I don't know how. Yeah, right. I never have known how that functions.
Right.
No.
Just on that then, was there ever a stage where you were playing in sort of pop rock cover bands?
No, never.
Never done it?
No.
Okay, cool, man. So you've always stuck to your thing?
Yeah, I mean, in the early days, I didn't do that, but I did do other things like, well, ships and theatre restaurants and backing acts, you know, backing cabaret acts and things like that. So I did sort of gigs that weren't playing music that I didn't want to do.
Okay.
Yeah. But you know, I just sort of function. I did some function things and things like that.
Yeah, right.
But I hated it, man. Like, I'd come home from those gigs, you know, and just and I'd end up just having to roll a huge joint and just lie on my back on the middle of the lounge room floor and go, what the hell was this about, you know? Playing music that I don't like.
Trying to get some of your soul back.
Yeah, or just playing music I don't really like to people who are not listening, wearing clothes I would never usually wear.
Yeah.
And carrying my bass cabinet through the fifth story of the Hilton.
Yeah.
You know, and all, you know. And so that was going to make, I was about 25 when I made that decision. I'm not going to do any of these gigs anymore. And if I need to supplement my income from playing music that I do want to like, that I do like, I'm going to do it through teaching.
Yeah.
Which I find really rewarding, you know.
Yeah.
I love teaching and I find it really, really rewarding, you know. I see people leave the lesson, you know, with a shine in their eye and some enthusiasm, and that's fantastic.
What's been the biggest challenge being in Sydney?
Well, I suppose the geographic isolation, which is just probably about. I mean, that's not Sydney specific, though, is it? Because you could probably say the same thing if you were in Perth. Well, lately, I mean, it's been. Although, I mean, I like to be optimistic, and I like to think there's an upswing a little bit lately, that things are improving again a little bit of late.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the thing that baffles me, I suppose, to nutshell it is, I can't think of another city in the world, Stevie, that's got 5 fucking million people with so little happening culturally.
Yeah.
Like 5 million people. Man, like, all those cities in Germany, you know, a lot of those cities in Germany have only got like 3 million.
Yeah.
And they've got twice the amount of...
Yeah. 4 or 5 festivals a month.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And a lot of clubs and theatre, art galleries, cultural events for families, all sorts of amazing...
Yeah.
Just life, just artistic life going on.
Yeah.
That thing, you know, like, and it's such a potentially an amazing place to have that happening. It's, you know, the weather's really great for it.
Yeah.
It's a nice city physically. I don't know how it went so wrong. I'm not a very politically. I don't chase it, I don't follow what's going on, I'm not particularly politically savvy. But man, I just can't understand how that is the case. You know, because we know we have artists to make it fantastic. But I don't know. That's what I find is the hardest thing to cop with Sydney and understand about Sydney. Yeah.
How many of your regular gigs have been directly affected by the lockout laws and stuff like that?
Well, I think some of them. It's hard to exactly predict, but I think there's that thing that it's hard to predict because of things like, say, the lockout laws. Say there's venues that maybe have music, say, 5 or 6 nights a week. On Fridays and Saturdays, they'll have bands that are maybe cater more towards people that just want to go out and dance and have some fun.
Yep.
And so they would have maybe 2 bands on a Friday night and 2 bands on a Saturday night. And the club would do really well. They'd have live music from, say, 9 o'clock till, say, or 8 o'clock, say, till 2. And the club makes a killing on those 2 nights.
Yep.
And so that allows them to then present music Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that's maybe, you know, a little bit more fringe.
Yeah.
But the lockout laws then have affected their weekend, so they now only have the 1 band each on the Friday and Saturday night, and they decide to cut back on their midweek stuff.
Right.
No, so it's really hard to tell because of that factors like that, you know. Because a lot of these venue owners, they do like to support artists.
Yeah.
They really do want to do that, but many of them are kind of artists themselves. But they also need to, you know, have a viable working business. So
yeah, of course.
So they know the Friday and Saturday nights are big bread and butter. That enables us to not have to make so much money on Tuesday and Wednesday. So it's affected it in that way. Yeah. Too. Which is hard to, pinpoint. It's hard to pin it down, but it's definitely an effect.
It's a great answer. Never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what specific area of bass playing do you find the most challenging? And I don't mean gigs and stuff like that. This is a question directly taken from the bass players roundtable that we had.
Yeah.
Yeah, just interested to get your take on it. Is it groove, soloing? Yeah. What do you find the biggest challenge? The reading, the writing?
No, it's not reading or writing or soloing. Or even, it's finding something that's interesting to me whilst not tripping the song over at the same time or the tune over at the same time. It's an interesting one though, because actually while I was listening to your bass player roundtable one, which was interesting, that thing, where we say, and I've said it myself, and a lot of musicians say, you serve the song, and there's sort of truth in that, but at the same time, there's a lot of ways to serve a song. Like Kate Bush's version of Rocket Man is really different than Elton's. If you go, well, serve the song, you kind of, a lot of the time you kind of say serve the song, it's like, well, hang on, what did Dee Murray play on Elton John's version of Rocket Man?
Yeah, right.
But then you go, well, how about we do fucking Rocket Man like this? And you listen to Kate Bush's version of Rocket Man, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Or Stevie Wonder's version of We Can Work It Out, or whatever. So whilst I agree with that thing of serving the song, I don't like to have a fixed idea about what that is either. I think there can be a lot of ways of serving a song. So I think the idea is, the thing to answer your question via way of China is to try to not get in the way of the song and try to sort of serve the song, but at the same time not be on my knees to what somebody else's idea of that is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome answer. Do you practice much?
Yeah.
Yep.
I do. I practice. Yeah. I do. I practice a lot and play a lot. And sometimes that's more just playing, see what happens. And sometimes it's drilling specific exercises that I write out for myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And does that come about by a need to drill that stuff based on how you've played a certain night? You'd be driving home going, well, that didn't quite work.
Yeah, a little bit of that.
Tomorrow I'm going to...
Well, that one works both ways.
Right.
Because if I think I played well, I'll come home and want to continue it. And if I think I sucked, I'll come home and want to improve it.
Gotcha.
So I'll often come home and play after a gig either way.
Yeah.
But it's usually because I want to work on something different, because I'll hear somebody... I'll hear what, say, Michael Brecker, the kinds of lines Michael Brecker plays,
right,
or someone, and think, well, I can't play those, and want to get close to... Because I stopped listening to bass players for that stuff years and years, a long time ago,
Yeah, yeah.
And you listen to the amazing improvisers like Michael Brecker, or like, well, even right here, look, see that? This is a Joe Zawinul line, and it's 3 bars.
Right.
From this tune called The Harvest.
Yep.
And it's just, I just heard it and thought, what the hell was that? So I wrote it out.
Right.
And then, as you can see, it's 3 bars, but it's 3 amazing bars.
Right.
Bars that a bass player would never play that.
Right.
So I'll do a lot of, say, something like that. And then I play this upside down, or in triplets, or just ways to disguise my theft.
That's great.
And just work on things like that. Whatever comes to mind at the time.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Your kids musical?
They're all kind of. They've all got good rhythm. I noticed they all can dance. But the youngest one's sort of leaning towards music, I think. Mm-hmm. I thought my oldest son was going to be a musician, but he ended up being an actor.
Right.
And they're all creative, Yeah, they're all creative, but I don't know. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell because my oldest son, who's now 27, he had sticks in his hand from the age of 2 through to 5. Constantly drumsticks, and he had all these. We used to use my house as a rehearsal place, so he got to see Gordon and David Jones and Andy all the time in his lounge room.
Yeah, wow.
And he would sit there like glued to them,
trying
to tap. And I thought, oh, this guy's going to be. I would have bet my life on it, But then when he was 5, he announced that he wanted to be an actor, and that's what he is.
Right.
So I'm not going to. I don't sort of. I wouldn't bet on it anymore, having seen him.
Are there any Australian bass players that inspire you?
Yeah, there are. And I mean, when I was young, I used to go and see, by young I mean like 16, I used to go out and see Jackie Azarski play. Mm-hmm. He had a sort of jazz rock band called Burra Miata, and I used to be inspired by seeing Jackie play. And then a little later, I used to see Phil Scorgi play, and he could do things that I couldn't do, and that probably no one else I knew here could do either, And so he kind of, in a way, Phil kind of made it real that, again, like a local dude could play strings of notes,
Right.
And put solos together and have those kind of chops.
Another reason why you don't have to be in LA.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. And then, but I'd see other people around, like Victor Round's a little older than me, maybe 5 or 6 years older than me. I could see him, and there were certain things Victor would do. There was that period at the Paradise Jazz Cellar where I was working there. I was like 21 with Ken James's band, and Victor was working there with a band called Dumbala. And I used to see those guys play there, and I used to really enjoy watching Victor and what he was doing, and then there were guys that are my age, who right around exactly my vintage, like say Mark Costa, who can do the, he was doing the slapping thing so very well, and then more lately, I kind of, I suppose, as I've matured as a human being, which is obviously a work in progress, is, I sort of admire people more and more. I think, if I'm perfectly honest about it, for quite a long period, maybe 20 years, up until I was probably 40, there was an element of competitiveness. The other bass players were basically the enemy.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Well, that's like, there's a little bit of that, as maybe even coming from a sport thing, that swimming thing. Like, you win, you're trying to win.
Gotcha.
And that was in my psyche. But now I really love hearing different bass players and hear what they do and hear how they work. And like, I saw Adam Ventura. Actually, we did a gig with Adam Ventura, with James Ryan, the saxophone player, put a gig together a year or so ago, and he got 2 drummers. And who's the married guy?
Buddy.
Yeah.
Yep.
Buddy and Gordon.
Yep.
And me and Adam Ventura.
Right.
And saxophone.
Right.
So 2 bass, 2 drums. It was so much fun, and just hearing how Adam, approached it, and had a different slant than myself, and Gordon and Buddy had, but complimentary, and everyone listened. It was really a beautiful thing, So Alex Stewardson plays really beautiful bass.
Right. Did you played for Dig? Did you?
Yeah, but just dep. I used to dep for him when he couldn't do it.
Right.
Which was a different gig. Yeah. I was never in the band.
Right.
But I probably did about 10 gigs with them all up.
Right.
Yeah. But I can find something that I like in a lot of people's playing more and more, you know. And even things from, even not things in Sydney, but just things on recordings, you know, that I might have heard and gone, oh yeah, you know, it's all right. And now that I'll hear and think, wow, you know, it's actually mentioning Dee Murray before with Elton John, you know, just what he does on Rocket Man. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, I like to listen to Nigel Olsson play drums all day.
Yeah, just the inventiveness of those people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think of it differently. As much as I've come through all that whole thing of virtuosic sort of, you know, electric jazz and all that stuff, I can dig, you know, anything if it's played well and just sort of interesting and with a sort of some imagination. That thing, you know.
Yeah.
And that's that thing, I suppose, too, when you're talking about what to play, you know, like how to. It's that thing of just trying to find something that's interesting, but serves the song, but you're not just going dung 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 dung. But well, you could do that and it would work, but sort of trying to find something that's still going to have the same propulsion as that, but isn't that, you know, or
right.
something a little bit different, something a little bit that gives it a signature or a little bit of difference, you know, that thing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think finally, what motivates you?
Fear of death.
Nice one. Yeah.
I don't know. I think like I'm not a person that probably needs much motivation other than just sitting next to the bass guitar. You know.
That's cool, man.
If I'm sitting next to the thing, it's tempting me to, you know, to pick it up.
The draw is there.
Yeah, but I have to say, you know, like becoming a father again, like the third and fourth time, you know, when I was 50 and 55, I became a dad again. And so I've got these two young boys, you know, and it's important for me to be an example to them of doing the thing that you love and working hard at what it is you do and all that stuff. Because it would be pretty easy at 59 now, you know, to sit around and not do much. Yeah. But because they're around, you know, that sort of... And maybe it sounds like a cliche answer in a way, like, because of my kids, you know, I'm doing it for them.
Yeah, but some people don't give a shit about the kids. So,
yeah,
you know.
But it's partly, as I say, I'm a person that would probably be motivated in this area, regardless of what was happening. But, you know, being an example to my boys is, I know that's important. Yep. No. Because I can't preach that if I'm not practicing it.
I understand. Yeah. Any new music coming up?
I want to do another... I've got a ton of music. I've got a ton of new music written. Yep. But it's a matter of... but I want to do it a little bit differently next time. I don't want to just go in for 3 days and bang it out, you know? Right. I want to maybe try something with a couple of little loop things in there and try things with a basic trio and then add some different people on different tracks and also, because I've done a lot of albums... Yep. I'm thinking maybe I'd do one next year when I'm 60, and that might be a good time. It's got to somehow, although it's hard to put into words, it's got to somehow mean a little bit more at this time in my life than just banging out another 10 tunes or 8 tunes, you know? Because I could do that, because I've got like 400 tunes, man. Like, I've got endless music. Yep. But it's somehow got to feel like something else other than just... Here's another 10 of my tunes. Here's another 10 of my tunes. Here's another, you know. It's got to feel like it's integrated with life somehow. That's cool, man. A bit more for the next one somehow. Yeah, at 60, that's how it feels, yeah.
Awesome. Looking forward to that, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steve Hunter, thanks so much for sitting with me today and having me in your studio and
thanks for having me.
Talking about your stuff, man. Yeah. It's an honour to meet you and hang out and
yeah, cheers, Stevie.
It's cool, man.
I enjoyed it, man. It's good.
Cheers,
fun.
Thanks, brother.
Pleasure.